There was still some nervousness and some suspicion that why is Moi taking too long to hand over power? Is there a scheme for him to reverse the decision of the electoral process? So there was pressure.
Lakini wale wanaozingatia kuongoza, msiweke Kenya chini. Msiweke msingi wa siasa zenu kwa chuki.
A military grand march befitting a departing head of state. That 1st of December 2002 it was. A last salute for the then outgoing Commander-in-Chief, the late Daniel Arap Moi. A symbolic parade marking the end of his 24-year rule.
Power iko kwa wananchi, na sisi tu ni wadhamini yao. Mimi Mwai Kibaki naapa kwamba nitatenda kazi zangu za urais wa Jamhuri ya Kenya kwa uaminifu.
Events of the day watched closely by his then allies.
We asked him, do you want us to accompany you to Uhuru Park? And he said, no, I think let me go and do it alone, because these people are so impatient. They have even broken the protocols that were supposed to be there, so that even the ceremony of a proper march past and what have you, so that you hand over effectively. You remember, all that was dismantled.
It was a historic moment. Kenyans had never seen this happen. For the first time since independence, the ruling party KANU had been swept out of the highest office on the land, State House.
Wengine hawakuamini kwa sababu wanaamini power katika kontinenti la Afrika, kwamba kuna mtu anaweza kuwacha power ya urais.
He was clever and intelligent enough to see it coming, the end of KANU coming.
A leader of the opposition, Mwai Kibaki, was going to sit on the throne.
The fact that Moi went out there and handed power, the sword and everything, to the instruments of state to Kibaki was a major milestone in Kenya's evolution, democratic evolution. That was a very, very critical thing.
Mistakes people have made in the past should not distract us from confronting the enormous challenges ahead. One would have preferred to overlook some of the all too obvious human errors and forge ahead, but it would be unfair to Kenyans not to raise questions.
In an election riddled with ironies, the man Moi had drafted to breathe fresh air into KANU, Raila Odinga, had engineered a mass walkout, a split that weakened the once indomitable party and subsequently its candidate Uhuru Kenyatta.
Wangeniuliza kama wangekuwa waaminifu kwangu, rais,
umetaja kijana huyu ukitumia mambo gani?
I don't think he had in his mind that he was going to give it to Raila. I don't think he had. Neither do I think he had in his mind that he was going to give it to Saitoti. No. I think he had formed up his mind that my candidate for Kano is Uhuru Kenyatta. So they should have known that this guy is planning something else. They didn't see it, they never saw it. So, I mean, you need to be smart, eh? You need to be bright. You need to be out of the box in politics.
Tutapeleka mswada kwa bunge ya kuangusha serikali na kufanya uchaguzi mara moja.
The presidential and parliamentary election results mirrored what was inevitable: Kanu's death.
The Kalenjin nation remained in Kanu. And that is why you could see votes of NARC in the whole of Rift Valley, North and South and Central Rift. Those who were largely non-Kalenjin. The Kalenjin vote into NARC was very paltry, very small. Right? So that largely the Raila people and the Kibaki people and other associates were all into NARC. LDP, yes. Liberal Democratic Party. So it was taking the smaller tribes into itself. So you had Nyanza and you had Western. And then the smaller tribes across the country and the whole of coast was Liberal Democratic Party. Then Kibaki's DP. Kibaki's DP was taking now what you would call Central Kenya. The Maasais were LDP. You see what I mean? And that is part of South Rift.
For political observers, it was the first time Moi had failed in the great game of politics.
Na naweza kubeba mzigo si kama mimi, ataweza kubeba kubwa kama mimi. Atabeba kadiri ile anaweza, na kwa usaidizi wetu ataweza kubeba.
In a crash succession program, Moi had anointed a young Uhuru Kenyatta his successor, a decision that upset his then allies, among them the late George Saitoti, Kalonzo Musyoka and Raila Odinga, a group that joined forces with the National Alliance of Kenya, NAK, of Charity Ngilu, the late Wamalo Kijana and Mwai Kibaki to form the Juggernaut, the National Rainbow Coalition, NAC. A coalition that ignited the wave of change.
Captain na naibu wake walikuwa wamepata majeraha kwenye michezo. Wameingia kwenye kiwanja kama tayari tumeshafunga bao 2 kwa yai.
President Kibaki's victory in racing terms would be classified as a dead certainty. If it was a horse race, it would be a dead certainty that maybe the only way it could lose would be by falling. But since that is not likely, I think it's now a one-horse race.
The change is inevitable. And I want to urge the KANU leadership to recognize that fact and to decide how it wishes to exit itself.
There was no looting. People are very peaceful. People are provoked. And I condemn this highly because the government must heed the people's call. President Moi must be told people are fed up.
Anger and distrust had characterized a majority of Moi's reign. By the year 2002, Moi was deeply unpopular, and that was transferred to his party KANU and his chosen one, Uhuru Kenyatta.
We shall forgive him, but we shall not forget, because we are all carrying scars of bad leadership that Moi has inflicted on Kenyans.
Tunapigana na corruption, na tukipigana na corruption kwa bidii na kupitisha masheria yawe yanahitajika, basi utapata msaada.
The country was suffering economically, and continuing with KANU was not resonating well with many Kenyans.
Anything that Moi did was simply to tether our society into third blindness, backwardness, and he was able to rule this nation for 25 years. Let me tell you, he was not pushed out. He decided when to go, with whom, and what. And they never saw it to this day. The man just took helicopters and went home.
At the back of his mind, unless he was thinking very differently, he must have known that eventually KANU will be out of power. And in Africa, an independence party that is gone out of power to try and make a comeback is an uphill task. If you study what is happening in Africa, once a party has been in power, an independence party has lost power, it's very difficult for it to regain power.
Daniel Arap Moi is one of those people that Kenyatta laid hands on for him to lead this nation. With one promise, please don't ever forget us as this family. And today, we can say this. And I'm saying I'm from the Kasim tribes of the mountain Kenya, without shame, that Daniel Moi tried to get a successor elsewhere, but it was not possible because of the old promises, 1971. And the old men of the Gikoyus know what I'm talking about. And this is why he goes to Mama Ngina to find out whether it will be possible to get one of the sons.
Mimi, Daniel Arap Moi, naapa kwamba nitakuwa mwaminifu kwa Jamhuri ya Kenya na kuitumikia kwa moyo wangu.
It was in 1978 when Daniel Arap Moi took over the leadership of the country. Against stiff opposition from Jomo Kenyatta's powerful men, Daniel Arap Moi, a reserved former primary school teacher, took the oath of office as Kenya's second president.
No one will come and build this country except you. No one.
Even before the death of Jomo Kenyatta, a powerful group around Kenya's first president wanted to block what looked like the inevitable ascension of the then vice president.
They did not want to prepare a character that would come to take over from Jomo Kenyatta, because they still thought that after Jomo Kenyatta, they would have another Gikuyu. And so that struggle continued with Moi, some of them slapping him, spitting on him. For 11 years, Moi did not have any sauti.
A change of the constitution to blur Moi's path was mooted. From within the presidential inner circle, Charles Njonjo reappeared, wielding a political weapon.
Kenyatta and Njonjo nipped it themselves. so that in 1977 they stopped that campaign, and Kenyatta said, you cannot continue whipping Moi. He may be your next leader. And that was almost the sunset of Kenyatta's time.
His ultimate goal was Moi becoming the president of Kenya after Kenyatta. He successfully pushed for the retention of the dictates of the Constitution on matters presidential succession. Jonjo, through sheer will and craftiness, saw the spirit and letter of the then Constitution invoked the same day Jomo Kenyatta breathed his last. When 90 days lapsed as dictated by the then supreme law of the land, Moi was elected and opposed in the 1979 elections.
And properly supported in accordance with the Constitution by 1,000 Kenyans, properly registered in various constituencies in all the parts of Kenya.
And confirmed Kenya's second commander-in-chief of the armed forces.
Nyayo! Nyayo!
Nyayo!
Moi will be ridiculed and labeled a passing cloud by a group called Kiambu Mafia.
What is needed in Kenya today is stability. When I call upon foreign investors, I'm equally calling upon local investors to invest.
Wananchi waliwachagua ili muweke maneno yao, vitendo vyao, matakwa yao mbele, kwa sababu nyinyi ndio mlionichagua.
They wanted Moi's presidency to be as short as possible. Unfortunately for them, Moi kept winning, and it was a sign of what was to come. Brutal, scheming, anything goes.
And the Kenyans appear like they must be oppressed to be led well. And the way they look is that they do not trust honest people. Moi discovered that. They do not trust polite and humble leaders. Moi discovered that. They do not trust any godly man because they think that even godly people are a mess all over. Moi discovered that. They do not trust that a poor man can have wisdom. They don't. Moi discovered that.
But Moi wanted Kenyatta masses on his side, so he coined a slogan, Nyayo. It was to be a vow. He promised to follow in the footsteps of his predecessor, Jomo Kenyatta. However, Moi slowly shifted the content of his philosophy to suit his own style and political events of the time.
Moi's way of running government was eventually he made the final decision himself. Moi was a very well-informed president. Moi consulted. Moi could even call in on matters of provincial administration. He could call even an assistant chief if he knew one, and if something was taken from Moi tried to learn as much as he could on what was happening in the country.
As Moi embarked on his presidency, he hit the ground running, attending to every problem and commissioning developments in person. And from one region to another, Moi cultivated his growing popularity, making development his top agenda. Not to ruffle feathers so early in the day, Moi retained much of Kenyatta's powerful men, and precisely Charles Njonjo, the man credited for ensuring he became president. Also at the heart of Moi's early cabinet was long-serving Laikipia politician, the late Gigi Kariuki, and the man who would later succeed him as president, Emilio Mwai Kibaki. Kibaki served as vice president. Riding in a presidential limousine became their trademark.
The future I would like to see is a country, is Kenya, free from tribalism, free from sectionalism, free from all the things that divide the people of this land.
Moi spoke directly to the need of the people at the capital city, at the elites, and at the ordinary Kenyans.
Nasikia mimi mara kwa mara nasema mambo ya ukabila tubilieni mbali. Wananchi wa Kenya kokote wanakoendelea, hiyo ni nchi yao, nchi yao.
But then, disgruntled servicemen from the Kenya Air Force staged a coup attempt. It was in the early hours of the 1st of August, 1982.
This is the voice of Kenya, Nairobi. Time now is 12 minutes past 6.
They took control of the Voice of Kenya, VOK, forcing veteran journalist Leonard Mambo Motela to announce that Moi had been dethroned.
There should be no movement of persons or vehicles from one place to another. The police should now assume the role of civilian until further notice.
But the Air Force men will meet a heavy hand of loyal soldiers led by Brigadier Mahmoud Mohammed. A shaken Moi will address the nation, assuring Kenyans that he was still in charge.
Yale yaliyotokea leo asubuhi kwa muda mfupi ilioletea wananchi wasiwasi mwingi.
But events of the day had left behind a changed man at the helm of the country's governance structure.
In 1982 coup changed Moi's strategy completely because it rearranged his priorities. Before then, his approach to public life, public affairs was different from after the coup. Because after the coup, he realized that he had enemies within. So he had to try and reorganize the government to his own liking and his own way of doing things.
That is the time that switched Moi on to become the dictator that in fact tortured me, jailed me, and isolated me, not only from my own compatriots, but even from my own family for more than 10 years. Before they came to realize that Kumbe Moi was actually cheating against our own person. So they started turning back, and most of them still wonder why they rejected Katambo. It is because of the bitterness that Moi had that made him the cruel man, the sadist as we know him.
He tightened the control both on the government and the political party. He reorganized KANU political party to give it more power.
And this was the time observers knew it was going to get really bad. Harboring a ruthless resolve, he swiftly consolidated his power by getting rid of all other perceived centers of power, such as Charles Njonjo and some of the Kenyatta boys he had retained. Moi decided to create his own inner circle, dominated by men from his own Kalenjin community. His most trusted ally became the late Nicholas Biwott, or simply the Total Man. The coup had given Moi the opportunity to bend things to his own wish and will. He used the law to strike a full blow at Kenya's democracy. He made security and intelligence gathering a pillar of his presidency and his own survival.
And he was much more careful on what was happening. The police, the entire security structure was reorganized. The army was reorganized. Everything changed.
To aid his new resolve, Moi engineered a change in laws. Political gatherings were literally outlawed.
Moi relied heavily on the intelligence system. At that time, it was called the Special Branch. Moi relied very heavily on this system to help him make his decisions. First of all, he was a very early riser. Moi would be up at about 5 in the morning, and he would have his very early meetings with his security chiefs from about 5:30, 6 a.m. in the morning. When the rest of the country is now coming in, when other people are coming in, maybe for either cabinet meetings or other sessions which start at 8 or 7:30, by that time, Moi has had his brief.
He made it very difficult for anybody to say anything unless you are, of course, parroting what he had said before, or you are a court poet singing praise to him. Anything else was unacceptable.
He changed the rules of the great political game, choking other parties. A contentious Section 2A was inserted into the Constitution in a record one day, making Kenya a one-party state. Kenya simply became a police state.
Na ataendesha nchi hii siku ile, kama anataka kuendesha angojee siku yake takapofika. Lakini liloko kwangu ni kwamba tuende mbele na msingi wetu ni Mwenyezi Mungu.
The disciplinary committee, led by the then ruthless David Okiki Amayo, became Moi's hammer against dissidents. At this time, Moi was ruling with the proverbial iron fist. Any dissent was ruthlessly dealt with. Arrests, detention without trial, and torture became characteristic of the Moi reign. Few dared to oppose his rule as detention laws had been enacted.
It was a very difficult time. Of course, there were those arrests. If I give my personal experience, I was arrested so many times, I had so many cases. I don't know which part of the country where I had not been taken to court or taken into a prison or a police station. So it was constant. In my offices, you know, because I used to I used to have a legal practice. I'll be working and a policeman is standing in my office or sitting at the door, you know, grabbed a chair and sat at the door. Not talking, just telling you, you continue with your work. And they stood there watching every little movement that one was making. So it was not an easy time.
I don't think President Moi did anything outside the law in terms of arrests and detentions, because there was a provision in the law that a person shall be detained by the president. It was in the law. He found it in the law from independence. Yeah, they were created there. Some of these same people, because they were done in parliament. Yeah. So they were done by some of these people who are now, because Jaramogi Oginga Odinga was there from the beginning. And when they now realized it was them who were being bad-lucked by that law. So they started saying, this is bad law, this is Moi's law. No, it wasn't Moi's law, it was the Constitution of the Republic of Kenya.
However, criticism against Moi's rule gathered pace. They came from quarters Kanu and Moi never expected. Institutions of higher learning, especially the University of Nairobi,
the meeting is not there. The PC is not elected by anybody. Whatever is here is appointed by one person. Whatever you see here is illegal. Yes. It has been declared by the Provincial Security Committee as illegal.
Students and lecturers were on the forefront, pushing for change.
House of God.
Clergymen teamed up with opposing politicians to call for the reintroduction of multi-party democracy.
Police fighting their own people in the cathedral.
But they all discovered that Moi was eager to answer fire with more fire.
If your people are not violent, then we cannot beat them. Why should we beat them?
Some had to flee the country. Those not so lucky were arrested, taken to Nyayo torture chambers, and later in court, where they were hurriedly sentenced to imprisonment.
In the opposition politics, Nairobi had always been the center of politics. It was a nerve center. Everything was being done in Nairobi, essentially. But when we were arrested, unwittingly, Moi decided that we should be taken to courts and to prisons in our areas. And I was taken to Siaya. Jaramogi, even before then, had been, arrested in Nairobi and taken to his Siaya home. Muliro was taken to Kitale. Mashin Shikuku was sent to Kakamega together with Shamala. Paul Mwite was taken to Kiambu. Manyara was taken to Meru. It was like spreading the movement. And wherever we were taken, like me when I was in Siaya, the streets were full. I was being driven from the police station to the court. People came out, shouting pro-opposition slogans. And before I was taken to the Siaya police station, I had been locked up at Maseno police station. And that ride from Maseno to Siaya, in between, the police were just mobilizing the people for us.
A Preservation of Public Security Act had given Moi power to throw people into jail without trial.
And then eventually I was denied bail and was taken to detention while awaiting trial in Kodiaga prison, where I found Lukobok, Dennis Akumu.
But as suppression became severe, the glamour for change only became louder.
Where are you going now?
Now we are going to regroup and strategize because we want to address the people.
The 1988 Mlolongo elections poured fuel on the push for change.
I wish with humility to urge you to be loyal and patriotic to your motherland.
In 1984, when I sensed what was going on and we could see the changes that have begun to set in, that was the right moment we should have resigned.
Some KANU stalwarts began to defect. With Moi handpicking members of parliament, something had changed irreversibly.
It catalyzed the pressure for change. It gave it an impetus. It gave it more fuel, so that more people were saying, if you can see really a long line being declared the loser and the small line, the short line, being declared the winner, there is really something wrong in our political spectrum. We need to change it so that it is the majority that takes the day.
The man to embody the resentment that greeted the 1988 Mlolongo elections was the late Kenneth Njindo Matiba. The then powerful minister was removed from his position as KANU chairman for Kiharu constituency. The Mlolongo elections, overseen by then powerful KANU personalities that included Brudi Nabwera, David Okike Amayo, and loyalist Stephen Kalonzo Musyoka. It marked the end of the game in KANU for Matiba. He resigned from cabinet. He was then expelled from KANU, and that meant he lost his Kiharu parliamentary seat. The assassination of then Foreign Affairs Minister Robert Oko and that of clergyman Alexander Muge only served to increase voices against the Moi regime. A political rally was planned for the 7th of July, 1990.
That is the time at which I met Matiba. I was very impressed because remember I was also editing the Nairobi Law Monthly at that time. I was very, very impressed. So when Matiba and Rubia signed that famous letter asking for a license to hold a meeting at Kamukunji, there was a lot of excitement. We were ready to challenge the government because we had seen dictatorships collapse in the Soviet Union. We had a history of heroic resistance which had been repressed by the one-party dictatorship. We felt that we shouldn't miss the opportunity provided by the wind of change. So the call itself galvanized those of us who really were looking for an opportunity to challenge the one-party dictatorship.
It was meant to send a message to the government.
We decided that we had to go Kamkunji. First of all, to give people courage, because at that time, you know, to appear in a rally which had been declared illegal, and with that kind of security detail mounted to ensure that people don't take part in the meeting. We were sure, you know, that, you know, a lot of leaders will not turn up or many people will not turn up. But yet, out there, people were clamoring, they'd come out. You know, tear gas was being thrown and hurled everywhere. So we said, you know, we cannot let the people down because the people are out there in the streets. So we said, we must join them, and we said, okay, well, let's get into this pickup. And as we went, because we know the grounds at the Kamkunji had been occupied by the police. So as we went through the Kaloleni, Bama, Majengo, California area, we said, you know, we must see the people, show the people that we had actually gotten into the area, if not to Kamkunji itself. But all of us, knew we were going to be arrested. And you know, if you see the photograph of Martin Shikuku, he was wearing some kind of a jacket, and I was wearing a sweater. Muliro, of course, would dress formally. He was in a suit. But all of us decided in the previous meeting we had that we must dress warmly because we were sure we were going to end up in a prison or a police cell.
I was arrested on the 4th, I think the same day that Matiba was arrested. I had gone to State House Primary School to pick my children, and I noticed the cars that were following. There was, standard 1, I think, and 2. And I remember me telling them I jotted down the number plates of the cars that was following me. And I was living in Gomo Estate. I told them that mark those cars, because if we don't get home, whoever it is, just give them the details of the car, because I was sure I was going to be arrested. So I drove with these people following me to Gomo Estate. They surrounded the estate. It was not my first arrest. It must have been the 10th, 15th. So I had this sweater always at the ready just in case they come. So I wore it, and I opened the door, and when they saw me, of course, they were very angry. So they threw me into the back of Pujo 504, and as I remember off, they stopped on the road and really beat me up. They were very angry because I had kept them, I had hidden, and I'd got all this media, that had recorded my arrest. So they really beat me up, and then took me to Nairobi area, traffic headquarters. I never knew there were cells there, but below there are cells, and that's when I learned that Matiba had been there.
Moi knew he was fighting a losing battle and decided to do what many least expected.
Wengine wanataka kuangusha serikali yako wakiwa watumishi wa serikali, kuharibu pesa.
In December 1991, against the wish of many KANU diehards, he rallied KANU to repeal Section 2A of the Constitution to allow for the reintroduction of multi-party democracy.
Ili tuone hawa walio katika siasa, wale walio watumishi wa serikali, sisi tuseme kwamba tufungue, tuondoe ile section ya katiba ya Kenya ya 2A.
Some believe that everything that happened on that day had been planned.
Globally, one-party systems were no longer sustainable. Issues of aid being frozen was now biting. The situation was becoming very difficult for Kenya. And the opposition was gaining more sympathy from the international community and even from the Kenyans themselves, who are feeling the pinch of hard economic times. So clearly, out there, one could see that the mood was for multi-partyism. But because Moi was a very dominant president, and he literally controlled the KANU, people were scared of speaking out fully. So even that conference at Kasarani, people had been choreographed to say that we should remain a one-party state.
He read his speech, the first pages. When he now reached that one, he now said, mimi yale ambao ninayaona mbele ni kali kuliko tunayoona hapa. So lazima tujiokoe kwa yale ambayo yanatukujia.
Kwa sababu ninawahurumia, mama nawahurumia, wazee nawahurumia, vijana wa university, wa secondary school, wa primary schools wako na mimi, na sitaki hata moja awawe au aumie. Tufungue section hiyo Na nauliza nyinyi nyote kukaa na mimi tuende barabara yetu tukiwa KANU pamoja.
We knew that people would be saying that, but at some stage Moi was going to turn around. So that the presentation would have been that he, as Moi, has seen the future, has seen that multipartyism, whatever, and he came out and said, I must save you as a country. I know you love me, I know you love KANU, I know you love that, but the world has changed.
What comes out of your lips, played by the tongue, is the product of your heart. I think and I'm convinced, I was around the man, I was with the man. Moi was sincere in saying, I have accepted that change. If he wasn't sincere in the years that followed, he wouldn't even have allowed, he would have even interfered with the amendment of the Constitution. But he allowed the National Assembly to amend as was agreed by the national organ of the party, KANU, at that time. Yeah, so somebody was only trying to take away the change. That change in yetu, siya Moi. It was just some cheap game of trying to snatch away what the man had done.
He declared himself the professor of Kenyan politics, and the 10 years that followed made many to agree with him. As the opposition went on celebrating the coming back of multi-party democracy, Moi resorted to his chambers to draft a plan that will see KANU remain in power.
If you know I have made some contribution or I have played my part in contributing towards the development of Kenya, vote for me.
The wave of change had galvanized the country under the opposition outfit, Forum for Restoration of Democracy, FORD. But Moi still had tricks in his bag.
Every status quo situation, it uses a method that will scatter the opposition. How do you do it? You study to say the guys in this party are who and who. What are their unique, what is unique about each one of them? And then you use that uniqueness and the temperaments of each individual. You use that for the temperament of Jaramogi Oginga Odinga vis-a-vis the temperament of Kenneth Matiba. So you look at it, the likes, what do they like? What are their egos? So you talk into their egos, you talk into their likings, you talk into their inner beings as individuals, so that you raise out the egoistic attitude and behavior of a person. So that way, you will then split the two.
The breakup began on the very first day, and there was a feeling that because Ford Asili is led by a Kikuyu, we shouldn't allow a possibility where the other Ford is also led by a Kikuyu. And that was the beginning of the end of the two Fords, unfortunately. And Moi saw it. Moi saw it and he exploited it to the maximum.
The special branch was now well aware of the discussions and the divisions that were emerging from Ford. So quite a number of them traveled to the United Kingdom and told Matiba that, you know, this is your chance. And secondly, you know, they told him that, you know, if he did not take his chance, then Mwai Kibaki was going to eclipse him.
And the man who is leading Ford is Jaramogi Oginga Odinga. Jaramogi Odinga is slightly older than Kenneth Matiba. So you put into the head of Kenneth Matiba that it is time for Jaramogi Oginga Odinga to go where? Go home. So when he's coming, I'm younger and he's old and he has had his time. He needs to go away. So that's what was done. Kenneth Matiba was given that impression just by some statements. And then when he came, he had a very good reception at the airport, our president. Now, when he saw that reception, everybody said, by the way, is moved by the ground.
Even when he came back, Matiba was still willing to talk to Jaramogi. I think in his heart, he was well aware that for the opposition to win, you needed to rally behind one political party and one candidate. And some of us who visited Matiba at that time in London, and I was in London at the time, off and on, and his commitment to having Jaramogi Oginga Odinga leading the opposition movement was undoubted. But then there was these elements.
The first thing he did when he now landed in Ford was a big quarrel with Jaramogi Odinga. So he got into it. He got into the trap. And that trap caused a split in Ford. Then you ended up having Ford Kenya, and then you now ended up having Ford Asili. Now Ford Kenya says, we are the first one, so we are the ones who are known in Kenya. So they call themselves Ford Kenya. Matiba said, I'm Asili. I think he was financing Ford all the time from the beginning. So he said, Mimi ni Asili. So he said, Ford Asili. Not long from there, then we got Ford people.
Kibaki had left government to start his own political party, DP.
They were hoping Kibaki would then go into Ford. But when it now split, it now became Kibaki DP. I think there was also the chemistry between Kibaki and Matiba who are not that right. Otherwise, Kibaki would have gone into Ford Asili.
The day Mwai Kibaki formed the Democratic Party is a day that any democratic transition resulting in the leadership of any of us who was in that early stage of second liberation was taken away. Because I remember very well, we had gone with Paul Mwita to London to talk to Matiba, who was then recovering. And after great persuasion, Matiba had actually agreed to stand down for Jaramogi. And then out of the blue came this announcement from somebody Matiba called General Kegoya, announcing the formation of DP. And this got Matiba so annoyed. He said, if Kibaki is standing, I am going to run for president. And it was single-minded.
And so Moi and Kanu roamed home in 1992 and managed to stay in power until a gamble at naming his successor in 2002.